Okay, today is Friday, November the 6th, and we are starting a new foldable on decimal operations before we continue with rates. Okay, so if you're working from home and you do not have this foldable, you can just copy these notes down in your notebook. So let's look at the multiplication one. So if you're in class, you've already cut this out, so you're ready to get your notes. So number one, blank. What is the first thing that's going to go in that blank on multiplying decimals? What's the first thing you're going to do? Multiply. So on number one, just write down the word multiply. Okay, after we multiply, blank the number of digits after the decimal in your problem. So right there, we're going to put count. We're going to count the number of digits after the decimal in your problem. Okay, then it says your answer will have that many digits after the decimal. Good, after the decimal. So we're going to work out an example. I'm going to write it horizontally. 5 and 6/10 times, 5 and 62 hundredths times 2 and 3/10. 5 and 62 hundredths times 2 and 3/10. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to write it like this. So our first step is to do what? Multiply. So we're going to multiply just like we always would. So what is 3 times 2? 6. Probably should have scooted this up a little bit. 6 times 3 is 18. So we're going to carry our 1. 5 times 3 is 15 plus 1 is 16. Now, whenever we're multiplying like this, what do we have to put right here? Not a decimal, but a 0. Remember you learned that? We didn't multiply 6 times 2. Look, we multiplied 3 times 2 is 6, and 3 times 6 is 18. When we carried our 8, or we wrote our 8, we carried our 1. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 1 is 16. Okay, now we're going to multiply what's in the tens place. Like this was our ones place if we're looking at whole numbers. If we take away our decimals, this is our ones, this is our tens, this is our hundreds. So 2 times 2 is what? 4. 2 times 6 is 12. Write your 2, carry your 1. I'm going to mark out that first one because I know we've already added it, just so I don't accidentally add it twice. And then what is 5 times 2? 5 times 2 is 10 plus 1 is 11. Very good. Okay, 6 plus 0, 6. I'm running out of room. I'm going to come over here to the side and write it just because I don't want it to come off my paper. 8 plus 4 is what? 12. Carry my 1. 6, 7, 8, 9. And then 1 plus 1. 2. And then 1 plus 0. 1. Now, what does it tell me to do? Count the number of digits after the decimal in your problem. So how many digits do we have after the decimal in our problems? Well, there's 2 right here, and there's 1 right here. So how many total do we have? 3. So for our answer, we're going to go to our answer. Now, y'all know you're never going to write it like this, so I only did it because I was running out of room. So we're going to go to our problem. Where is our decimal in this whole number right now? What number is it behind? No, it's not behind the 2. Let's look at it again. This is our whole number right here. If we don't see the decimal in a whole number, where is it always at? At the very back, right? So it's behind the what number? The 6. So when you don't see a decimal and you have a whole number, it's always at the very end. So here's my decimal for pretend. Now, how many places am I going to move that decimal? How many places did I count? 3. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to put my decimal. So my answer is 12 decimal 926. So 12 and 926 thousandths with a TH. Okay, now let's flip it around. Let's look at the division. It says, if the blank has a decimal, move it over in both numbers. So if the divisor has a decimal, move it over in both numbers. Bring the decimal, we're dividing, think about it, up. Good, bring the decimal up. And then we're going to divide. And then it tells us fill in zeros if you need to. So let's work out an example of that. Okay, so we had our problem written down wrong. I think you can see it now. So we had to swap it. So 0.018 divided by 0.015. So when you're writing this, you always look from left to right. So the number on the left is our dividend, and the number on the right is our divisor. The dividend goes under the doghouse. So let's go ahead and work this out. 0.018 divided by 0.15. Now, when we do this, you have to show your work. You cannot use a calculator other than to check it. So let's look at our notes and solve this problem. It says, if the divisor has a decimal, move it over in both numbers. So which one is our divisor? Yes, 0.15, so 1500ths. Does it have a decimal? Yes, so I have to move it over to make this a whole number. Which direction am I going to move this decimal to make it a whole number? The left to the right? To the right, very good. So I'm going to move it 2 places. So if I move it 2 places in the divisor, I have to move it in both numbers. So I have to move it 2 places in my where? My dividend, right? Over here. So 1, 2, decimal. So my new problem is 1/18 divided by 15. So everybody see how we did that? All you have to do is look at your divisor. Do you have a decimal in your divisor? If you answer yes, then you're going to move that decimal to make it a whole number. But you have to do it to both numbers, your divisor and your dividend. So I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to the right in my dividend. Okay, so how many times will 15... Now, I know this looks like 1.8, but when you're dividing, we're just going to pretend like that decimal's not there for the moment, and we're going to look at it as 18 divided by 15. So how many times will 15 go into 18? Once. Good. So where am I going to put my 1? Over the 1 or over the 8? Over the 8. Very good. So I'm going to put my 1 right here. So now I'm going to multiply. What is 1 times 15? Good. And I'm going to subtract. What is 8 minus 5? 3. Okay. And you haven't learned this yet, but this is what I think Paisley, whenever we did the long division and you said someone at your house was helping you about adding the zeros to the end. So that's what you're going to do right here. Instead of having a remainder of 3, we're going to add a 0. If I add a 0 to this number and I bring down that 0, can 15 go into 30 evenly? Yes. How many times can 15 go into 30? 2. Good. So I'm going to put a 2 right here. So 2 times 15 is 30. Now, do I have a remainder? No. So I'm going to look back at my original problem. Where is my decimal right here? Between the 1 and the 8. What does it tell me to do? Bring the decimal up. So I'm going to bring this decimal straight up. Fill in zeros if you need to do. We've already divided. So I'm going to put a 0 just right here because I knew that 15 did not go into 1. And here's my decimal. So my answer is 0.12. So that's 12 hundredths. 12 hundredths. So my answer is 12 hundredths. You divide the exact same way. The only difference is you're going to move your decimal. You're going to move your decimal at the beginning of the problem before you divide, and then you're just going to move your decimal straight up. Okay, let's look at addition. Number 1 says blank up the decimal points. When we add, what do we have to do to our decimals? Line them up. Very good. Whoever said line. Very good. We're going to line up our decimals when we're adding. So right here, number 1, write the word line. Line up the decimal points. Number 2, fill in zeros. I guess that should probably technically be an ES, right? Yeah. Number 3, add. Number 4, bring the decimal down. Very good. So let's work out an example of that. 17 3/10 plus 33 55/100. So when I'm adding, I have to line my decimals up. Well, what do I do right here when I've got a 5, but I don't have a number right here? What do I do? Fill in a 0, right? So I have to put a 0. Does that 0 change that number? No. 17 3/10 and 17 30/100 is the same number. It does not change it. I can add zeros all day long behind that decimal, and it does not change the number. Okay, so now I'm going to do what? What does step 3 say? Add. So what is 5 plus 0? 5 plus 3? 7 plus 3? 10. Write your 0, carry your 1, 3, 4, 5. Now, what does it tell me to do at the very end? Bring the decimal down. So here's my decimal. I'm going to bring it straight down. So my answer is 50 85/100. So when you're adding decimals, you have to make sure your decimals line up in a line. Okay, keep rotating around, and let's get our last example. Now we're going to look at subtraction. Subtraction, you've got the same thing. We're going to line up our decimals. Fill in what? Fill in zeros. And instead of adding, we're going to subtract. Good. And then we're going to bring the decimal down. Very good. Same thing. We're doing the same exact steps, except instead of adding, we're going to subtract. So this example, I want you to write 23 minus 4 216,000. Now my 23 is on top. Okay, now I'm stuck. How do I know where to put my 4? Okay, let's think about it. Does my 23 have a decimal? No, so it is a whole number, right? Do you agree? So when you have a whole number, where is your decimal hiding? Behind the number. So where is its decimal, even though we can't see it? Behind the 3. So if I have to line up my decimals, where am I going to put my 4? Under the 3. Very good. 4 decimal 216. Okay, well look, I still have a hole right here. I have to add my zeros. Now let me ask you this. Could I have said 4 216,000 minus 23? No. Is that going to give me the same answer? No. I have to work it from left to right. So now I've lined up my decimal points. I filled in my zeros. What's my next step? Subtract. Okay, we're subtracting across zeros. So how do I do this? Okay, so this is going to become a what? A 10 because I'm borrowing. Can I borrow anything from this one? No. So I have to go next door. Can I borrow anything from this? No. So I have to go next door. Yeah, so I'm right here. So this is going to become a what? Now this is going to become a 2, which really I can't say 4 minus 2, so I have to go next door and make this 2 a what? 1. I'm borrowing a 10. So this is a 1. This becomes a 12. What do these become?